The story kicks off with the birth of the 13th prince. Yeah, you heard that right. Noah is one of 3 heirs to the king, and the moment he opens his eyes in this world, the first thing he sees is a woman looking down at him tenderly. He wonders if she's his biological mother or just one of the palace servants. He doesn't have much time to figure it out because an older man with a white beard immediately appears. Turns out he's none other than his father, the king himself. The old man walks over to inspect him curiously, sizing him up from head to toe like he's evaluating a freshly discovered jewel. Finally, he makes a comment, saying Noah got his mother's looks. She obviously blushes when she hears this. Trying to deflect the compliment, the mother responds that at least Noah's eyes and eyebrows are identical to the king's. While this is happening, Noah realizes something really weird. He can see his own stats floating right in front of him, though he doesn't understand what the hell they mean yet. Just then, one of the royal court mages approaches with firm steps, carefully lifts the baby in his arms, and announces something important to the king. Little Noah has an affinity for the water element. The king lets out a laugh full of pride and says that when Noah grows up and comes of age, he'll give him the southern lands of the kingdom where most of the water magic clans are concentrated to govern and administer wisely. After that, the king orders the mage to check the child's complete stats. When the numbers appear in the air, the entire hall goes completely silent. Not even the king can believe what his eyes are seeing. Suddenly, someone in the room shouts excitedly that it's a divine miracle, and the rest join in the celebration. Noah, confused by all the commotion, decides to check his own stats. That's when he learns the bombshell. He was born with the power of an SC rank water mage, something never before seen in the kingdom's history, let alone in a newborn. 6 years pass since that historic day, and Noah has grown into a healthy, strong kid. During those years, he learns everything about the kingdom of Merse, the territory governed by his father. It's a peaceful place where peace has reigned for decades without wars or major conflicts. The people adore the king and also admire his children, who are respected by both commoners and noble families. However, Noah doesn't pay much attention to politics or court drama. Why? Because in these 6 years, he discovered something way more interesting about himself. He has a unique ability that no one else knows about. Turns out Noah can absorb the XP experience from his subordinates. Basically, the more servants he has under his command, the stronger he becomes. This also means that unlike everyone else who has a level cap, Noah can rank up infinitely and become the most powerful mage on the planet if he follows this path. His maids are loyal to him to the death and constantly comment among themselves how Noah, despite being only 6 years old, acts with the maturity of an adult. Shortly after, Noah heads to the dining room for breakfast and reflects on something. His abilities are still limited by his young age, but if he keeps training consistently, he should continue growing at an accelerated pace and eventually surpass even his older brothers. His thoughts are interrupted when a beautiful servant named Evelyn enters to inform him that the Crown Prince and 4th Prince Henry have arrived to visit him. Noah decides to finish his breakfast at full speed. Even though they're family, he knows he can't keep the heir to the throne waiting. Seconds later, he enters the guest hall and kneels to formally receive them, Crown Prince Albert and 4th Prince Henry. Albert looks at him with a cold stare that chills his blood and asks in a dry tone where he was. Henry, on the other hand, greets him with genuine warmth, telling him he's growing into a very well-educated and refined young man. Then Albert comments that one day Noah will be an excellent chancellor, and adds that he's brought him a special gift. He claps twice, and immediately a terrified-looking servant enters, carrying a small coffin that emanates a deadly aura, making the entire atmosphere feel heavy. Noah doesn't understand anything about such a strange gift, but Albert orders the servant to open it. The guy hesitates, but he has no choice. The exact moment he opens the coffin, an aura of death and despair floods the entire room. Noah can clearly feel that dark energy as he looks at the sword resting inside, and he wonders what the hell he just experienced. Before he can recover from the shock, Albert tells Noah to take it with his own hands and see how it feels to hold it. Noah really doesn't want to touch it, but being a gift from the Crown Prince, refusing it would be an unforgivable disrespect. He takes it carefully, though the sword is massive compared to his small 6-year-old body. Albert smiles with satisfaction and tells him he knew Noah could do it. Finally, he reveals that this sword is a legendary weapon designed exclusively to be wielded by water mages, and its name is Leviathan. He also drops some chilling information. Before Noah, 120 people tried to wield it, but none survived to tell the experience. This deeply scares Noah, who almost drops the glowing blade to the floor. Henry intervenes to calm him, telling him not to worry. If the sword hadn't accepted him as a bearer, he would have died the instant he touched it. With that said, Albert and Henry get up to leave. Noah bows in respect, but inside he's thinking that damn crown prince, unfortunately his older brother, was testing him with something so dangerous for no valid reason. He knows perfectly well that if he said anything about it, his head would end up on a pike as a warning. That same night, as he's getting ready for bed, Noah notices that one of his maids, Zoe, seems tense and worried. He asks if she's okay. Zoe hesitates at first, but when Noah insists, she finally kneels before him and confesses she needs an extended leave. Turns out a devastating flood completely destroyed her home village. Her family is starving, and she plans to sell herself in the red light district to get money and help them survive. Noah orders her to stop talking immediately. He tells her she's my personal maid, and I can't allow her to leave for that long. Then he adds that she should bring her mother to the residence. He'll give her the position of back gatekeeper with a salary of $5,000 a month. Zoe is confused and tells him she's never heard of that position, and besides, the salary is way too high for that kind of work. Noah tells her not to worry about those details and mentions there's an empty house on the western outskirts of the capital where she can live comfortably with her mother. Zoe can't believe what she's hearing and breaks into tears just as the head butler, Dylan, appears at the door, asking if Noah needs anything. Noah asks him if he knows about the flood in Zoe's hometown. He then orders him to buy as much land as possible in that affected area. Dylan is confused since from an economic standpoint it would be a terrible investment, but Noah explains they need to protect people in need. If they don't intervene, some low-life scumbags will occupy those lands and use them to exploit the survivors. Dylan is astonished. Noah asks what's wrong, and Dylan responds that he's simply impressed with Noah's maturity and strategic vision, considering he's a kid who's never experienced anything like this. Noah thinks to himself that he's seen more than enough destruction and suffering in his previous life, though obviously he can't reveal that secret. Dylan informs him that according to his rough calculations, buying all that land will cost around $70 million. Zoe's jaw drops hearing that figure. Even Noah knows it's a brutal amount of money. His entire group of servants earns a total of about $80,000 a year. He himself has approximately $50 million in personal funds he's accumulated through taxes and gifts from his brothers, but he's still $20 million short. He asks Dylan about the lands he owns south of the capital and tells him they'll have to sell them to cover the difference. Dylan is horrified hearing this and warns him not to do it under any circumstances. Those lands were a direct gift from his father, the king, and selling them would be seen as an unimaginable offense to the imperial family. Noah tells him not to worry, he'll personally handle talking to his father. Plus, he adds something interesting. Nobles have a moral duty to sacrifice themselves to bring peace and happiness to their subjects. There's also something else. A noble who publicly presents himself as a martyr willing to sacrifice his wealth for the people is deeply loved by commoners, which could prove extremely useful politically in the future. Dylan bows deeply before him and says he'll handle everything personally, then leaves to make the necessary preparations. The next morning, Noah gets ready along with his group of servants to conduct a direct inspection of the flooded area. Just as he's leaving, fourth Prince Henry calls out to him. Noah runs toward him with a genuine smile and apologizes for not visiting him earlier. Henry tells him he doesn't need to worry and asks him where he's planning to go. Noah responds that he's going to a region called Daza, which was completely devastated by the floods, and that he plans to buy land there after personally assessing the damage. Henry notices the sword Albert gifted him hanging from his waist and asks if he plans to use it during the visit. Noah says he's only carrying it as a precaution, though he hasn't felt anything strange since his first encounter with it. Henry pulls him aside away from curious eyes and confesses in a low voice that he was genuinely worried about the sword and Albert's sudden generosity. That's why he investigated on his own and discovered something disturbing. The sword seems to have its own will and can only be controlled by the person it recognizes as its true legitimate master. Noah remembers the chilling vision of all the people who tried to master it and died in the attempt. He realizes this sword is like a rabid wild dog. He'll have to earn its mastery step by step before he can truly control it. Henry warns him seriously to be extremely careful and not to use it unless it's absolutely necessary for his survival. He has a bad feeling the sword could take his life just like it did to hundreds before him. With that heavy warning on his mind, Noah departs for the Daza region. When he arrives, he's genuinely shocked by the level of massive destruction caused by the floods. He asks Dylan to locate the nearest government office and find out who the legal owner of the lands is, while he himself walks through the town to assess the situation firsthand. He notices the men are lined up in orderly rows inside makeshift shelters to receive relief food distributed by the government. He's about to demand to speak with the local official in charge when luckily the official in charge, a guy named Lorgard, arrives to do an inspection. Noah expects him to take immediate action about the terrible quality of the food. But to his surprise and horror, the man covers his nose in disgust, looks at the disgusting slop, and says it's enough for these people. The corrupt cooks celebrate the approval. The head cook informs Garl that his personal food, a luxury banquet, is ready at the mansion, and Garl decides to leave immediately without looking back. Noah can't take it anymore and confronts him directly, calling him a corrupt bastard with the most fragile ego you can imagine. Garl, deeply wounded in his male pride, unsheathed his sword and attacks Noah in fury. Noah immediately summons the Leviathan sword that Albert gave him, expecting it to protect him from the attack. The sword flies to his hand, but he soon discovers its true power when the blade starts violently resisting, burning him with its sinister aura and rejecting him. Still, he absolutely refuses to yield to the sword. With pure willpower, he manages to dominate it and earn temporary control of the legendary cursed blade. Once that's done, Garl doesn't have the slightest chance against him. He easily blocks his clumsy attack and declares with a firm voice that deceiving the people in times of natural disaster deserves only one thing: immediate death. With a single clean and precise cut, he beheads the man on the spot, leaving everyone present completely horrified by what they just witnessed. The guards quickly surround Noah, about to lynch him for killing a government official, but he drives the Leviathan sword directly into the ground with superhuman force, opening a deep crater that leaves everyone completely stunned and paralyzed with fear. The chaos attracts the attention of Knight Rowan, who was recently assigned as the temporary administrator of the area. Immediately recognizing Noah as the 13th Imperial Prince, he kneels before him with absolute respect. Everyone present is surprised to see this happen, but they soon imitate him, kneeling before Noah as a show of respect. Noah firmly orders Rowan to secure decent quality food for all the refugees. Rowan deeply apologizes for the situation and immediately obeys the order. Upon finally returning to the capital, Noah is summoned by his father to the throne room. He expects to be severely reprimanded for killing a government official, but to his total surprise, the king openly praises him for his wise decisions, reviews his updated stats, which are now significantly higher than before, and sincerely thanks him for his valuable help. He tells him he'll need to continue actively supporting him in governing the kingdom in the years to come, and so Noah continues his upward path as one of the youngest and most promising pillars of the Kingdom of Merce. A couple of days pass since the previous events, but Noah decides to stay in the kingdom's capital. The reason? This city is the beating heart of the entire territory, and without a doubt the most prosperous place full of opportunities. Tons of talented people from all over the kingdom come here looking for work and a better life. Noah's master plan is simple: recruit one of these people with extraordinary abilities to increase his own stats and become an unstoppable force. His first candidate is a young woman he's heard very interesting rumors about. Supposedly, she's an incredible singer that everyone's talking about as a bright promise in the artistic world. Noah finds out exactly which theater she's going to perform at. He sits down next to Zoe in one of the seats to personally verify if she's really as good as the rumors say or if it's all smoke and mirrors. Shortly after, a young girl with an elegant top hat named Ollie appears on stage, greeting the audience and preparing for her performance. She starts singing and immediately Noah is completely mesmerized by her voice. He knows perfectly well she's not the most technically perfect singer he's ever heard in his entire life, but she's definitely a girl who loves her craft with every fiber of her being. He starts seriously considering taking her under his wing as part of his team. Before the presentation even comes to an end, a group of thugs violently burst into the theater and yell at Ollie to shut their stupid mouth once and for all. The entire audience holds their breath in unison, wondering what the hell these aggressive guys want. Ollie is completely paralyzed with fear as the thugs advance threateningly towards the stage. One of the theater employees tries to intervene to defend the performer, but the fat leader of the group brutally shoves him aside like garbage before jumping directly onto the stage with all the arrogance in the world. He yells at Ollie to pay up already, telling her that singing on these crappy stages won't give her anywhere near enough money to pay the huge debts that her father left behind. She visibly trembles with fear as she begs him with a broken voice to please leave her alone, that she's doing everything she can to earn money honestly, and that she'll soon be able to pay what she owes. But the fat guy responds with contempt that that's a super crappy way to make money. He tells her that if she really wants to make tons of money quick and easy, she needs to open a social media channel, start uploading provocative photos or suggestive selfies, and even sell ridiculous stuff like her bathwater to weird fans. She responds with disgust that she's a respectable, decent girl and would never in her life stoop to doing something as degrading as that. Then the fat guy directly threatens her, telling her he's going to break her both legs if she doesn't do exactly what he's ordering. That's precisely when Noah decides enough is enough and he has to intervene. He orders the fat guy with an authoritative voice to get away from the girl immediately. The fat guy turns towards him with a mocking expression and tells him he'd better go back to his mommy's lap to drink baby milk or he's going to get the beating of his life. Noah doesn't care about the threat at all. He jumps from his seat with determination and starts walking confidently towards the stage. He tells the fat guy that according to the imperial law decree, it's completely illegal to force children to assume their parents' financial debts. Furthermore, it's also totally illegal to force any person to sell their body to pay any type of debt, regardless of the amount. The fat guy, absolutely furious at being challenged by a kid, violently grabs him by the shirt collar and lifts him in the air like he weighs nothing. He tells Noah with hate that today will be Noah's last day on Earth, without having the slightest idea who he's really talking to. With a simple snap of his fingers, he creates a menacing purple aura that instantly knocks all three thugs to the floor. While they're lying on the ground, Noah unsheathes his legendary sword and points it directly at the fat guy's throat. The thugs finally realize they're totally outmatched and that they messed with the wrong person. They immediately tuck their tails between their legs and run out of the theater like cowards. Noah quickly approaches the worker who was pushed and injured and helps him up carefully. Noah tells the employee that if those guys ever come back to bother anyone in this theater, to send them directly to him. Noah hands him an official business card. The employee is in total shock upon discovering that the brave kid in front of him is in fact none other than one of the imperial princes of the kingdom. Noah isn't interested in praise or bowing at all, so he turns directly toward Ollie and casually asks her what her total monthly expenses are. She thinks for a long moment, also taking into account her sick mother's expensive medical treatment, and finally responds that her monthly expenses are around $600. Noah tells her straight up that he'll personally pay her $2,500 every month so she can dedicate herself exclusively to singing and improving her technique without financial worries. Ollie is completely shocked and can't believe what her ears are hearing. Noah adds something else. Her salary will progressively increase as she gets better and more recognized. With that said, he kindly asks her to finish the song she was performing because he really wants to hear how it ends, and he calmly returns to his seat in the audience. That same night, when Noah finally returns to his residence, his maids receive him joyfully. Suddenly, he notices something strange. The thugs from the afternoon are out there with their heads pressed completely to the ground in a pleading gesture, begging him to receive them so they can formally apologize. Noah knows perfectly well they just found out he's one of the princes of the kingdom, but he strategically decides not to grant them an audience. He tells his maid to dismiss them immediately, asserting with authority that an imperial prince doesn't have time to meet with anyone who feels like it. Right at that moment, his older brother, Henry, arrives and tells him he made the absolutely correct decision. He explains that Noah would lose all his authority and respect if he sat down to talk with those commoners every time they decide they want an audience. Noah responds intelligently that that's not the only reason he rejected them so coldly. He explains his true strategy. He wants those guys to firmly believe he's still very angry and resentful about what they did to the girl, so that pure fear prevents them from ever bothering her again. Henry asks with curiosity who exactly this girl is and why he's so interested in protecting her. Noah answers honestly that she's a very good singer with tons of potential, and that if she keeps improving consistently, she can become an extremely valuable resource for the entire kingdom. Henry smiles broadly, telling him that although he's very young, he thinks about complex situations like an experienced adult. He comments that Gary, another one of their brothers, is a similar age to Noah but behaves like an immature brat and isn't anywhere near as smart and intelligent as he is. Noah responds with politeness and diplomacy that Gary will also eventually understand things sooner or later with experience. He knows perfectly well that although he calls them brothers, they are true blood brothers because they share the same mother, while he has a different, separate mother. Then Henry completely changes the subject to the legendary sword, saying he honestly didn't think it was possible, but Noah really seems to have completely mastered the cursed blade. Then he asks with genuine curiosity where exactly the sword is right now, and how the hell he manages to carry it since it's supposed to be way too big and heavy for his small body. Noah stands up to show him in person, using his special magic to summon the massive sword right before his brother's surprised eyes. Henry is completely shocked. It's the first time in his life he's seen someone pull something from practically nowhere. He asks confused how deep he put it exactly and if it hurt to do it. Noah responds laughing that it's nothing like that. He simply magically shrinks the sword to a tiny size and stores it comfortably inside his sleeve to transport it. Henry lets out a deep sigh and says Noah never ever surprises him with his abilities. He mentions that sword was believed to be cursed and dangerous and spent more than 2 complete centuries stored alongside other national treasures in the royal vaults. According to all written historical records, absolutely no one has ever managed to master it until now. Later that same night, Noah decides to attend an elegant party he was formally invited to. Upon leaving his residence, he sees the thugs are still out there prostrated on the ground waiting. The fat guy gets furious again at continuing to be completely ignored and shouts with rage that he can kill him wherever he wants, that he shouldn't act important with him. As a direct response to that stupid threat, Noah releases only a minimal part of his cursed sword's dark power, which makes the fat guy immediately fall to his knees again, trembling with absolute terror. After that brief demonstration, Noah elegantly boards the carriage and soon arrives at his final destination. A distinguished elderly man named Ray personally receives him at the entrance. The entire ballroom quickly fills with excited murmurs as soon as word spreads that the 13th Imperial Prince is present at the party. Ray asks him with interest about the impressive sword he's carrying, and Noah responds naturally that it's the legendary sword believed to be cursed for centuries, and that Crown Prince Albert personally gave it to him as a gift. Everyone present in the room is genuinely impressed and start commenting among themselves that receiving such a personal and valuable gift from the Crown Prince himself is a huge and significant social event. One of the men present, with an extremely fragile ego and little intelligence, blurts out something stupid, saying the sword must obviously be a cheap toy replica. He doesn't realize he's talking so loud that absolutely everyone can hear him clearly. The general murmur stops abruptly, and all eyes turn simultaneously towards Noah, while the loudmouth almost wets himself from pure fear, wondering what terrible consequences he's going to suffer now. Noah doesn't even move a single finger, but suddenly a deadly dark aura violently erupts from the sword and envelops the entire room like a dense fog, plunging everyone in a terrifying trance where they feel the close presence of death. Noah firmly orders the weapon to stop immediately, and the deadly aura disappears instantly as if it had never existed. Ray is deeply surprised by that overwhelming power and comments with a trembling voice that everyone present in the hall clearly felt they were a little closer to death than they'd ever been. A while later, Noah sits comfortably on a small improvised throne as all the noblemen present approach in line to pay them homage and desperately try to gain his political favor. They all seem pretty boring and generic to him, until finally a distinguished blonde man named Alon formally introduces himself along with his adopted daughter, a young woman named Cindy. The girl seems very alert and vigilant due to Noah's powerful presence, but he strategically decides to ignore that for now. He asks Alon with genuine curiosity how exactly he ended up adopting her as his daughter. Alon explains his story. He originally bought her at a slave market when she was little, but the girl showed great willpower from the start. She was incredibly quick to learn anything new and socially skilled with people. Since he had no biological children of his own, he decided to officially adopt her as his legitimate daughter. Noah smiles broadly hearing that inspiring story, telling him he loves those kinds of stories of overcoming adversity. He cordially invites them both to his mansion to talk more calmly and privately about important matters. Alon feels very pleased and honored to be the only guest Noah has acknowledged and selected among all the nobles present, but Noah discreetly comments to Ray the true strategic reason he highlighted them. Cindy, in some mysterious way, can perceive his immense magical power. She proved it when Noah
Noah discreetly released a bit of concentrated energy from the sword, and Cindy noticed it immediately, quickly turning to make sure they weren't going to be attacked by some invisible threat. A couple of quiet days pass since that social incident, and while Noah takes a relaxed walk through the city, he casually runs into the 8th Prince, Oscar, who decides to accompany him friendly through the market to see if they find something interesting or valuable among the merchants. Rummaging curiously through a pile of old forgotten junk, he discovers a dusty grimoire. The exact instant he takes it in his hands, one of his main stats immediately rises to an S rank. He's instantly interested in the object and decides to buy it without hesitation, also noticing that his legendary sword reacts strangely to the magic book. Oscar recognizes the tome as an ancient magic book created by a powerful sorcerer a very long time ago, but suddenly the book violently opens on its own and releases a huge demonic monster into the open air, causing panic among the people. Oscar yells at Noah to get away immediately and get to safety as soon as possible, but Noah simply unsheaths his sword with total calm and plants himself firmly in front of the demon without showing a single trace of fear. He tries to cut it with a quick first slash, but fails in the initial attempt.
So he intelligently decides to use a bit more concentrated magic on the next attack and direct the cut upward to avoid accidentally destroying everything around him. With that devastating blow, the magical creature ceases to exist completely, while Oscar stands in silence, wondering internally just how ridiculously strong his little brother has become. Witnessing this impressive display, one of the market vendors comes running toward them and kneels desperately, begging Noah insistently to please see a special object he has stored in his shop that could be a true hidden treasure. He leads both princes directly to his shop and proudly shows them a glowing magic ring. He confidently claims the ring still hasn't accepted anyone as its legitimate owner since he acquired it, and excitedly asks Noah to try it on to see if it works. Noah curiously puts the ring on his right thumb, and the ancient magic instantly activates, covering his entire body with beautiful, impressive-looking protective armor. The vendor is completely dumbstruck by the magical spectacle, but Noah absolutely loves the result and decides to buy it right then and there without haggling. Oscar, however, doesn't let him pay a single cent, firmly insisting it'll be a special gift from him as an older brother. With that matter completely resolved, they decide to return together to the theater to watch Oli sing and enjoy her performance. But the moment Noah steps down to my elegant carriage, the fat guy from before surprise attacks him with a sharp sword, blinded by revenge. Noah immediately activates a magic shield from the newly acquired ring to easily block the deadly blow, while the royal guard brutally tackles the fat attacker to the ground and completely immobilizes him so he can't move. Noah doesn't even care about the whole thing anymore and walks straight into the auditorium to watch the performance. He finds Oli on stage dealing with two annoying drunks, stupidly fighting over her attention. Noah intervenes immediately and uses his magic to magically shred their clothes completely, after which the two run out of the theater embarrassed amid audience laughter. Then he seriously calls the establishment's owner and tells him he's genuinely disappointed with the place's security, or rather the absolute lack of adequate security in the theater. He directly offers to buy the entire place. The owner hesitates a bit at first, but Zoe pulls out $100,000 in cash practically out of nowhere, which gives the man all the financial motivation he needed to accept the sale. Noah thanks Oli directly, and she tells Zoe she'll never be able to repay the debt of gratitude she owes him, but Noah kindly tells her to focus exclusively on singing and perfecting her art, because someday in the future, he wants her to sing before the king himself. With that said, he calmly takes his seat among the audience again while Oli begins one of her most beautiful songs, specially dedicated to him. Noah wakes up to the sound of his maids moving around the room. He's got a busy schedule today. While they help him dress, one of them reminds him he has an important meeting scheduled. Noah reviews the documents on his desk and finds a formal request from a certain Dead, the governor who manages the whole Shui region, territory that's technically under his jurisdiction. It's time to find out how well this guy is doing his job. Noah tells the maids to let him in when he arrives and then starts putting on fancy clothes for no apparent reason. Minutes later, Dead enters the hall, kneels respectfully before Noah and introduces himself with full formality as the Governor General of Holshoi. He begins to recite the entire boring formal speech everyone gives while kissing up to members of the royal family, but Noah politely interrupts him and tells him to skip that unnecessary part and take a seat already. Once both are seated comfortably, Noah casually mentions they've met before on another occasion.
Dead immediately confirms it, saying he came to formally greet him about 18 months ago, right when the emperor officially appointed him as governor of Holshoi. Noah asks him directly how his work is going currently, especially since there was a huge, devastating flood in Holshoi recently, and Dead is exactly the one who has to handle all the consequences after that disaster. The dark, somber expression on Dead's face gives Noah all the answer he needs, and he knows perfectly well things aren't going well at all. Holshoi is one of the main grain-producing areas of the entire empire, but it's pretty vulnerable to constant flooding, just like any decent girl's DMs on social media when she opens her inbox. For that precise reason, the emperor strategically appointed Dead as its governor because he originally comes from the land of water mages, and everyone thought he could be effective with the critical flooding situation. Noah decides to thoroughly understand the specific problems he faces before judging him hastily, and asks seriously what the real problem is. Dead responds with frustration that they don't have sufficient funds, and without available money, they simply can't do absolutely anything to rebuild. Noah can't believe it because it was a direct imperial order to issue special funds to rebuild Holshoi after the disaster. Dead responds bitterly that the Ministry of Internal Affairs is literally sitting on their approved funds, and they always find new excuses every time he tries to withdraw that allocated money. Noah understands the entire corrupt situation now with total clarity, and immediately tells Dead firmly to accompany him directly to Finance Minister Maverick's house. They arrive to find him busy eating a juicy, greasy steak for breakfast. The guy keeps stuffing his wrinkled mouth with food and asking with disdain what exactly brings a prince to visit him this early. And Noah goes straight to the point, without beating around the bush. He asks the corrupt old bastard why the hell he's not giving Dead the money he urgently needs to rebuild Holshoi after the flood. Maverick says he has a very good reason for withholding those funds. Noah warns him firmly that if he dares say a child wouldn't understand the complex reason, he'll make him eat that steak through his ass. The fat old man gets pretty annoyed by that direct threat, but he can't say absolutely anything back to an imperial prince without consequences. He finally agrees to explain his reasons and says that Holshoi and its area were flooded extremely severely recently, so the emperor shows his imperial grace and generously exempted them from paying taxes for the entire year. He says with twisted logic that they should simply use the money they saved by not paying annual taxes to rebuild themselves. And Noah immediately calls him out on his absolute nonsense and lack of logic. He patiently reminds him the emperor canceled the taxes precisely because the people of Holshoi didn't have a single cent to pay them after losing everything. He asks Maverick indignantly how he dares talk as if the people of Holshoi had money hidden somewhere, and then directly asks if he's underestimating him just for being a small child. Maverick stammers nervously hearing this and quickly decides to completely change his story. He says with another excuse that the Ministry of Finance can't allocate money to rebuild Holshoi at this specific moment because they're currently building a luxurious summer retreat for the Emperor as a priority project, and desperately tries to convince Noah, since the Emperor will personally use the summer retreat to relax, it must be absolutely grand and spectacular. He claims they're building an entire complete city around the retreat to give it the extreme level of luxury an emperor deserves. Dead thinks to himself that all hope is completely lost because they can't say anything when the emperor's name is directly involved in the matter. But he forgets one crucial detail. Noah is literally the emperor's son. Noah firmly orders the old bastard to stop talking nonsense immediately because he's gravely disrespecting the emperor by saying he wants a luxurious, unnecessary summer villa while his own people are desperately struggling to survive day by day. Maverick knows perfectly well that if it's officially proven he lied about the emperor's intentions, his entire family will be eliminated along with him as punishment, and he immediately falls to his knees trembling. He tells Noah with a desperate voice that he's completely misinterpreting the situation and his words. He solemnly promises he'll distribute the complete funds to Holshoi immediately, without further delay, and orders his servants to get on the task with absolute urgency. Noah calmly returns to drink his tea after easily winning the battle of wits against Maverick, and Dead is truly impressed by his extraordinary negotiation and persuasion skills. He starts praising him effusively, saying he has brilliant abilities and caught the obvious contradictions of an experienced liar with total ease.
He deeply apologizes for trying to strategically use him to get funds by taking advantage of his influence, and prostrates himself humbly on the ground. Noah also realizes perfectly well that Ded was only trying to use his influence as an imperial prince to politically pressure the corrupt minister to give him the blocked money, but it doesn't bother him at all because he would have helped his people anyway regardless of the motives. After successfully obtaining the necessary funds, Ded immediately leaves to rebuild his damaged territory. Right then, an official messenger from the royal palace arrives, urgently saying the emperor has summoned Noah immediately with urgent priority. Noah doesn't waste a single second, going directly to the palace and respectfully greets his father, who's calmly feeding pigeons to relax his mind from stress. The emperor starts the conversation sincerely praising Noah for completely defeating the greedy finance minister with his brilliant wit, and Noah is absolutely astonished that his father already knows about things that literally just happened minutes ago. His doubts are so obvious on his face that the emperor easily guesses them and tells his son something valuable. Information is the greatest weapon any ruler can have, and he needs to keep it constantly sharp and updated. Noah deeply internalizes that wise advice and says with humility that he only did what was natural by subduing the corrupt finance minister. The emperor responds wisely that doing the morally right thing isn't easy at all for most people because they get carried away by constant flattery and completely lose sight of what's truly just. He turns toward him and gives Noah an affectionate pat on the head, saying he's already better than most people in the entire world at only 6 years old. Then he gently asks him to stand up from the ground and openly praises his impressive ability to master the Leviathan's sword, whose dark and bloody history terrifies everyone who tries to wield it without being worthy. Noah clearly realizes how truly dangerous the sword is after seeing numerous examples of deaths, and then his father tells him something important. He should also learn the proper techniques to wield his weapon correctly with mastery. For that specific purpose, he's personally arranged a professional sword instructor for him. Immediately, an extremely experienced knight named Damien formally kneels before the emperor and Noah. The emperor proudly introduces him as the best swordsman in the entire empire and asks Noah to learn well from him. Damien respectfully asks the emperor for permission to have a test combat with the prince because he wants to personally assess his raw skill and real potential before officially taking him as a student. The emperor gives permission without hesitation, and Noah immediately realizes his father completely trusts Damien without reservations. Damien unsheaths his impressive huge sword and tells Noah with respect to attack him however he wants without holding back. Noah carefully takes combat stance, but then his legendary sword starts acting really weird. He tries to dominate it with willpower and attacks Damien directly, who's genuinely impressed by his first precise strike. Noah feels the complete memories of Leviathan's past users flowing violently into his mind like a torrent and strategically uses their ancient memories to completely disarm Damien in a few devastating blows. The Master Knight accepts defeat with dignity and honestly tells the Emperor he can't teach Noah absolutely anything since his combat technique is already at the impressive level of a veteran swordmaster. The Emperor laughs proudly hearing this and decides to immediately reward Noah's exceptional ability by making him the head judge of this year's Knight Selection exam. Noah gladly accepts the important responsibility because he knows perfectly well that all the most skilled warriors in the Empire participate annually in the prestigious exam, since the winner can directly ascend to nobility rank. Noah strategically knows the winner's first official job is to automatically become a direct subordinate of the head judge, and he excitedly feels he can become even stronger quickly with a powerful warrior under his direct command. The Emperor then curiously asks Noah if he wants to do the exam in traditional elimination mode or in a more complex league format. However, instead of giving a direct answer, Noah makes an absolutely surprising request no one expected. He wants to completely skip the regional preliminary round and instead do the entire complete exam in the capital so he can personally judge all the participating warriors himself and ensure no true talent is unfairly eliminated for political or corrupt reasons. The Emperor confidently tells him to do exactly what he wants without restrictions, and with that total approval, Noah returns home satisfied. He talks at length with Zoe about the Knight Selection exam and asks her with interest if there's any outstanding candidate in her village too. She confirms sadly, saying they send the same guy every year, desperately hoping he'll bring glory and recognition to their humble village. Noah tells her this year there won't be regional preliminaries, so they can send more capable guys. But military talent isn't really the main problem here.
Zoe shyly mentions something painful. They only send one because it's all they can afford economically, even after opening a GoFundMe campaign for the guy among all the neighbors. She says everything is extremely expensive in the capital, from the most basic meals to the most humble lodging, and no one has enough money for that. Noah decides to solve that problem immediately too, generously declaring he'll personally cover the complete expenses of all participants so no talented warrior loses the opportunity before even fighting. He immediately summons Dylan urgently, and he tells him to buy absolutely all the vacant houses available in the capital, and if that's not enough to comfortably house all the participants, he directly orders him to build new dormitories. As for the food necessary, Noah tells the head butler to personally speak with all the merchants they have commercial connections with, and he himself will also speak directly with Alan about the matter. Alan gives him a reasonable financial estimate, but Noah immediately notes he gave him a huge discount that would leave him with significant economic losses. He curiously asks the exact reason behind that, and Alan courteously says they simply can't refuse a direct request from the 13th Imperial Prince. That kind of cheap flattery doesn't work on Noah at all, and he firmly states that no intelligent merchant gives away his money without a hidden strategic reason. Alan is genuinely surprised that Noah caught his hidden motives so easily, and finally tells him the truth. There's an important exam to select servants for the royal palace that happens at the massive scale as the knight selection exam. He honestly states he wants to know exactly what kind of people get selected there to work in the palace, and Noah immediately understands his complete game with total clarity. He realizes Alan strategically wants to plant a smart girl in the palace to give him any new and valuable information circulating there internally. On top of that, if the king becomes the beautiful girl's sugar daddy, Alan can gain tons of political and economic advantage. Alan suddenly gets nervous and quickly tells Noah his discount request isn't related at all to this servant exam matter, because he already sent an expensive gift for the servant exam directly to his mansion. Noah is impressed that Alan knows exactly how to properly please powerful people and decides to strategically support him. He says if it's a girl he personally approves of her abilities, he'll surely recommend her to work in the palace without hesitation. Alan gets super excited hearing this. But Noah tells him not to get ahead of himself too much, because the girls need to completely satisfy his demands and standards. Alan gladly accepts his strict condition and gives a discreet signal to Cindy, his adopted daughter, saying with conviction he'll carefully choose a girl who meets absolutely all his demands without exception. He kneels deeply before Noah, saying he's deeply grateful that an imperial prince honors a common merchant like him with his exceptional kindness and sharp business observation. He'd like to add the official emblem of the 13th Prince to all his stores to publicly prove his unwavering loyalty to him. Noah is quite pleased hearing that intelligent proposal, but seriously warns Alan he won't forgive any kind of betrayal under any circumstances. Noah finally returns home with that resolved, and notes with satisfaction that his stats have significantly increased after taking Alan as a loyal subordinate. But suddenly, he sees something alarming. One of his stats drops drastically for no apparent reason, and the impressive SS rank in his water attribute becomes a simple ordinary rank.
Noah immediately worries that something serious could have happened in his assigned territory of Almria, and urgently tells Zoe to go immediately to the palace because he needs to see the Emperor without delay. She relays his urgent order to the coachman, and Noah is before the Emperor just minutes after leaving. He tells him with concern that something bad has happened in Almria, and the somber tone of the Emperor's response makes him realize he already knows beforehand. The Emperor tells him he only has a vague idea that something's wrong, but there's no concrete proof yet. Just then, a servant discreetly approaches and whispers something important in the Emperor's ear, confirming all his terrible doubts. The Emperor tells Noah seriously that he did a great job quickly noticing something's wrong in his territory of Almria, because there's an active rebellion in Almria right now. Noah directly asks him how big he thinks the rebellion is at this exact moment, and seeing that only one of his skills dropped in value, Noah intelligently deduces it's not a massive rebellion yet. The king confirms that with a gesture and says they detected approximately around 5,000 armed rebels in Almria according to reports. Noah curiously asks him if he has concrete plans to suppress that rebellion himself personally, and he honestly responds it won't be possible because he's too young still and has absolutely no real combat experience, and doesn't know if veteran soldiers will obey him sincerely or just out of obligation.
He intelligently suggests the emperor sent another more experienced prince to effectively suppress the rebellion, and the old man is genuinely surprised by Noah's rational approach to such a politically sensitive topic. He decides to completely support his mature decision and asks if he'd nominate someone specific to eliminate the rebels. Noah, without hesitation, suggests that Henry would be the best person for the dangerous job because he completely trusts his military judgment. The emperor sends Henry along with Noah to suppress the rebels, and Henry curiously asks Noah if he's completely sure he wants someone else to take all the glory of triumph, because battlefield merit will help him enormously in his political future. Noah says with maturity that he needs more real experience to effectively lead his soldiers and doesn't want them to die in vain due to his inexperienced, defective leadership. Just then, his legendary sword reacts violently to some nearby hostility, and Noah immediately orders the carriage to stop in an emergency. He quickly deduces that the attackers using water magic must definitely be the rebels from Almria, and immediately takes them down with his superior swordsmanship. Henry is deeply impressed by his accelerated growth and says it would have been good if we could have interrogated those bastards for information. Noah calmly tells him they can still do it without problem because he didn't kill them, just temporarily knocked them out with his sword's paralyzing aura. Henry is once again impressed by Noah's intelligence. And then he says something important. He'd heard the rebels were mostly mounted cavalry, so he didn't expect infiltrated assassins at all. That casual comment makes Noah realize something's definitely wrong here, because they don't have good war horses in Almria naturally. When dawn breaks, he goes directly to see Alan and tells him the maximum security secret that there's been an armed rebellion in Almria recently. He gives him $10,000 in cash to buy absolutely all the horse feed available in the market immediately without delay, because he's already brilliantly deduced the rebels bought the war horses from someone else external, but they definitely need to buy feed from nearby markets to maintain them. If they can't buy anything because it's sold out, they won't be able to get enough food to keep their horses healthy, even after desperately looting civilians, and that way they'll strategically weaken significantly in battle. The Imperial Palace interrogation room is lit by torches. The Emperor's men have been working all night getting information out of the captured assassins, and they finally get them to talk. The Emperor summons Noah to share what they discovered. When Noah arrives, his father tells him the results. The assassins confess they weren't trying to kill him but kidnap him and use him as bargaining chip to negotiate. However, Noah tells his dad with skepticism that any assassin who spills everything so easily is probably lying or telling half the truth. The Emperor feels proud that his son has common sense beyond his years, but he tells him not to worry because he has a special way of knowing if someone is lying or not during interrogations. Noah isn't very interested in knowing the details of the art of torture, so he decides to believe what the Emperor says without asking more. The Emperor sincerely praises Noah for dealing with the rebels so quickly on the road, because if they'd successfully captured him, it would have cost them tons of work to handle the political situation. On top of that, he's genuinely happy Noah thought of the brilliant strategy of focusing on cutting off the food supply for the rebel army's horses. Noah's eyes open wide in total surprise because he gave Alan the order to buy all the horse feed just minutes ago, and his father already knows it in full detail. The Emperor continues praising him with pride, saying anyone with military knowledge would have thought of the classic starvation strategy to weaken the enemy, and Crown Prince Albert actually wanted to use that strategy to directly starve the rebels and make a brutal example of them. However, he decided something smarter, specifically focus on their horses to reduce their mobility and combat strength, and he also used his own personal money to execute the plan without asking the Empire for funds. The Emperor gives him a hard pat on the shoulder, telling him with admiration he has great strategic ideas, the necessary courage to act on them quickly without hesitation, which is definitely not easy to find. Noah feels a new kink awakening inside after being praised so much by Daddy, and then the Emperor decides to generously reward him for his brilliant way of thinking and officially allows him to add a sword to his personal emblem, which is a much bigger reward than it seems at first glance. In a warrior nation like this one, absolutely no one can add a sword to their emblem without the Emperor's explicit permission, and if they do it without authorization, they could be publicly executed for that crime. Meanwhile, obtaining the Emperor's direct approval to include a sword in the family emblem is considered a great honor for any noble, and Noah does his best to hide his genuine excitement at this great imperial reward. A little later that same day, Alan personally comes to visit Noah, who walks towards him with baby steps and takes a couple of long minutes to arrive from the other side of the hall. Noah says he arrived early to the appointment, and Alan responds professionally that he knows all the types of horse feeds sold in the market and also the exact routes by which the merchandise is transported, so buying all the available inventory won't be difficult at all. However, he's worried about something more serious. Carfin, the rebel leader, is an absolutely ruthless man who won't stop at anything to achieve his goal at all costs. He warns Noah seriously to be extremely careful when dealing with him directly or indirectly. Just as he finishes speaking, a maid hurriedly arrives to tell them there's a severely wounded man at the main door asking for urgent audience. Noah decides to go personally to see what's happening and finds a knight covered in blood who kneels with difficulty before him and says an armed rebellion has started in Almria. He states with a weak voice that his direct superior is also involved in the rebellion. He refused to follow him and betray the empire, but instead risked his life coming here personally to report it to the prince. Alan thinks to himself that the knight is risking his life completely for nothing because they already know about the rebellion from a while ago, but Noah sincerely thanks the knight for his bravery and orders his maid to treat his wounds immediately. The knight starts walking away with difficulty, but Noah turns around and orders him given $1,000 in reward for his effort. Alan follows him confused, asking why he's burning his money by generously rewarding the knight for information he already had before. Noah responds wisely that he's not rewarding the knight for his specific information, but for his unwavering loyalty and his courage to risk everything.
That night, when darkness covers the mansion, Zoe enters Noah's private office looking extremely distressed and nervous. She collapses on the floor before saying a single word, and Noah asks her with concern what the hell is wrong with her. Zoe first offers him with trembling hands a bag with $500 in cash and then a small bottle with suspicious liquid. She says with a broken voice that an unknown man offered her this generous reward to make him drink the sleeping medicine and then deliver him unconscious to them. Noah immediately realizes the rebels want him at all costs and are more desperate than the hot single moms in my area who've put ads on absolutely every dating site. He calmly asks why she brought the bottle instead of simply not showing up, and she starts crying inconsolably. She states between sobs that the men told her they'd brutally kill her if she didn't drug Noah as they ordered, but she could never betray him under any circumstances. Noah silently walks to his desk and writes Zoe a $5,000 check, telling her this is her fair reward for not selling her loyalty cheap like anyone else would have. Zoe's head spins seeing that huge amount and says she can't accept it because it's too much, but Noah gently tells her to be a good girl and take the reward she deserves. She starts crying even harder and thanking him effusively, but Noah says he needs her to do something important for him in return. He tells her with a serious voice he's going to drink the sleeping medicine and pass out as they planned, and then she'll take him exactly to the men who contacted her. He tells her to run as fast as she can as soon as she delivers him, so they don't silence her permanently as a witness. Zoe is absolutely terrified by the dangerous idea, but Noah has firmly decided to meet the desperate rebels in person. A few hours later, he slowly wakes up in the middle of absolute nowhere and hears the kidnappers talking amongst themselves about how killing him is only the last resort if everything fails, and that they need to keep him completely safe according to Carfin's direct orders. Noah lets the drug's effect completely leave his system before carefully assessing his situation. He sees his hands and legs are tied with thick ropes. However, the clumsy rebels are playing search and destroy because they didn't realize Noah hid Leviathan inside his ear instead of his ass this time for a change. He carefully pulls it out and returns it to its normal size before using his magic ring to create a sharp water blade and easily cut the rope binding him. Next, he decides to see exactly what happened to him while he was unconscious through the magical memories stored in his sword. He sees the complete scene of how he was sitting unconscious in his office and Zoe fleeing terrified while the rebels completely surrounded him. They decided to ignore her because getting Noah out of his mansion was the absolute priority of the moment, and they took him in an open carriage at full speed. With the complete summary of events, Noah mentally prepares to deal with the rebels who are resting peacefully around a campfire. The group's leader gets angry at whoever tied the knot so poorly, and then Noah surprisingly jumps out with his sword in hand. The bandits completely underestimate him and mockingly tell him to surrender nicely because his brother Henry isn't here to protect him this time.
One of them unsheaths his rusty sword to strike Noah and recapture him by force, but he can't even take a single step before Noah moves like lightning. He charges with speed and severs all the main veins and arteries in the neck with a clean slash, while the first rebel dies, choking on his own blood. The others are visibly intimidated, and Noah says coldly that he originally wanted to get useful information out of them, but everyone here is an idiot who doesn't even know it wasn't Henry who defeated the assassins the other time. The rebels finally prepare to fight seriously, but Noah finishes them all without apparent effort in a matter of seconds. Just then, he sees Zoe leading a group of Imperial Knights towards him, and he asks her with surprise what she's doing when he told her to flee. Zoe tells him with determination she was too worried about him and brought the knights to rescue him at all costs, but obviously it wasn't necessary because all the rebels are already defeated on the ground. Noah calls the captain of the knights and tells him to take the surviving rebels to interrogate them. One of the rebels accidentally drops a rare dagger with strange symbols, and a knight is about to pick it up from the ground. But Noah feels something's definitely wrong with that object and immediately yells at him to stop and not touch it. He orders everyone to get away immediately while he carefully approaches the dagger that emits a strong cursed energy he can clearly feel thanks to his mastery over Leviathan. He vaguely remembers the rebels talking about the cursed dagger they'd use to kill him if things went wrong with the plan. He can physically feel the pure hatred of the man who personally cursed the dagger, and for a brief moment he sees his face clearly too. Noah immediately recognizes him as the rebel leader Karfin and decides to deal with him personally in a unique way. He mentally speaks with Leviathan, asking if she can help him execute his risky plan, because it should be very easy for a legendary water element sword like her to channel energy across large distances. Leviathan glows intensely to give a positive response, and Noah channels his cursed energy to shoot a concentrated jet of cursed water towards the night sky. The cursed jet rises high above the clouds and travels across the entire empire, finally reaching Karfin wherever he's hiding and hitting him directly. When the next day dawns, the Emperor summons Noah again urgently and kneels to his level to give him proud pats on the shoulders for the extraordinary feat he just accomplished. He received the official report that the rebel leader was found dead in his hideout, with a perfect hole right in the middle of his forehead created by a concentrated jet of cursed water, and he knows perfectly well no one but Noah could have done something like that. Noah calmly confirms it, saying he used the hatred concentrated in the cursed dagger to lock onto the rebel leader's exact location and then gave him a no-scope headshot from hundreds of miles away. Once the rebels lose their charismatic leader, it's a piece of cake for Henry to militarily suppress them, and soon everyone involved in the rebellion is arrested and brought to the capital. A grand assembly is convened in the palace to decide their official punishment, and the emperor publicly orders the guilty to be brutally drawn and quartered, and you can Google exactly what that means if you have the stomach for it. Everyone is happy with the severe punishment given to the rebels and applauds the decision, but then Noah takes a brave step forward and respectfully kneels before the emperor, telling him he shouldn't do that under any circumstances. Everyone is absolutely astonished to hear him contradict the emperor, especially the emperor himself, who asks him with curiosity what exactly he means by that objection. Noah responds clearly that all the rebels should be punished according to established imperial law, and there's no mention whatsoever in the laws of executing anyone by drawing and quartering them in that brutal way. The rebel leaders must be cut in half according to law, and the rest sent to forced labor in the gulag as written, and he firmly insists they should follow the law to the letter. The emperor asks him with a serious tone how he can reject the most brutal form of death for people who specifically rebelled in his assigned territory, and Noah simply responds wisely that if the emperor breaks the established law, it'll have an extremely negative effect on his personal reputation and people's perception. Everyone is literally speechless hearing this logical argument, but the emperor finally decides to follow what Noah wants out of respect. He says they'll follow imperial law to the letter, but adds with a firm voice that he wants the criminals to receive the maximum punishment the law allows, without showing any mercy. Noah has no problem with that whatsoever, and the emperor directly orders the prime minister to personally ensure the law is followed exactly when punishing the captured rebels. The entire court immediately starts praising Noah for standing up so bravely before the emperor and publicly correcting his mistake, and they begin praising him as a future legend of the empire. Even the emperor is genuinely proud that Noah stood up to him with courage and decides to generously reward him for stopping him from breaking the law he himself established. He thinks for a long while and then decides to reward him with a unique title. The emperor publicly states that although any of his children can technically stand up to him if they want, it's completely different if they do it for the right reason with solid arguments. Noah did exactly that and showed how smart and brave he is before the entire assembled court. That's why the emperor officially grants him the title of Wise Prince, and the change is immediately reflected in Noah's magic stats window.
The emperor even goes as far as publicly saying that if he hadn't been born a complete decade earlier, he would have been better for the empire, though he doesn't clearly say he would have been a serious contender for the imperial throne. The court suddenly starts loudly cheering for Noah hearing that powerful statement, and then the emperor changes the subject and asks him about the preparations for the upcoming knight selection exam. Noah respectfully asks permission to share his detailed plans later in private, and the emperor accepts without problem. After finishing all the court's official business, they go together to a private area with a decorative fountain where Noah starts calmly drinking tea while 4 servants surround him in formation with buckets of water in their hands. At Noah's precise signal, they all try to splash and soak him simultaneously from different angles, but Noah simply uses his ring's magic shield to easily stop all their attacks without moving. The emperor doesn't understand what exactly that demonstration means, so Noah patiently explains he'll ask all the exam participants to attack him exactly like that, with their best strike, and he'll judge their combat ability based on how close their attack comes to actually touching him. The emperor is absolutely impressed by this innovative evaluation method, but he thinks with concern there are obvious risks in it if someone very powerful participates. Noah declares with absolute confidence that he'll personally deal with anyone strong enough to break through his magical defenses, and the emperor is once again impressed by his courage. That night, the emperor goes to the empty throne room with the prime minister, who thinks his public comment that things would have been different if Noah had been born earlier was unnecessary in front of the crowd of nobles. The emperor just laughs calmly about it, saying he said it completely seriously because Noah is truly special among all his children. However, he's also a bit worried about Leviathan's tremendous destructive power. Despite its true power still being sealed with ancient magic, he orders his trusted servant to bring a special treasure from the secret warehouse, thinking that it said Leviathan's true seal should never be broken under any circumstances, but maybe Noah can control the legendary sword's complete power without destroying the world.